Ladies and gentlemen, when we consider the trajectory of a life that seems, at first glance, defined by innovation, ambition, and a relentless pursuit of the extraordinary, it's easy to assume that it is solely the product of individual genius, that the milestones, the risks taken, the moments of triumph and failure, are the results of a solitary mind pushing against the boundaries of possibility. Yet, if we step back and examine closely, a subtle but profound truth emerges. Even the most seemingly self-driven journey is shaped, influenced, and sometimes entirely redirected by the people who enter our lives. There are individuals whose presence resonates in ways that ripple across the decisions that define our existence. Decisions that shape companies, cities, and even civilizations. In my own life, there has been someone whose influence was not always visible, whose guidance was never overt, yet whose presence became a compass in moments when clarity was scarce. It's fascinating, scientifically, how human beings are wired to respond not just to information, but to emotional resonance. Neuroscience tells us that our brains are not merely calculating machines, they are deeply social organs. The prefrontal cortex, the seat of reasoning and decision-making, operates in constant dialogue with the limbic system, which governs our emotions. Every significant decision we make, whether launching a product into orbit, investing in a technology that could redefine transportation, or deciding the trajectory of our personal lives, is a negotiation between logic and emotion, cognition and feeling. And often, the most subtle influences are those that tap into both. She entered my life at a moment when I was facing a decision that would determine the future of one of my earliest ventures. It was a time when the concept of taking enormous, almost reckless risks seemed necessary for survival, yet fear and uncertainty loomed larger than ambition. In those moments, the human brain can become paralyzed, overanalyzing probabilities and contingencies to the point of inertia. What she did was extraordinary in its simplicity. She reframed the decision not in terms of fear, but in terms of purpose. Her perspective activated the dopaminergic pathways in my brain, the very pathways associated with motivation and reward, reminding me that the pursuit of a meaningful goal is, in itself, a form of neurological and psychological reinforcement. That moment, though small, became a tipping point. I remember sitting late into the night, poring over spreadsheets, projections, and countless what-ifs, and realizing that the voice of reason, data, and logic alone could not answer the question of whether to proceed. It was her insight, her uncanny ability to see the potential for transformation in the midst of chaos, that allowed me to trust a vision that seemed impossible. Cognitive science suggests that when we are faced with high-stakes decisions, our brain often searches for a trusted heuristic, a shortcut through the noise. She became that heuristic. Her understanding of human psychology, her sense of timing, and her unwavering commitment to authenticity provided a neural anchor in the storm of uncertainty. But her influence was not only intellectual. Human connection is deeply intertwined with our capacity for resilience. Studies in psychoneuroimmunology reveal that social support directly impacts stress regulation, immune function, and cognitive flexibility. Every late night, every crisis of confidence, every doubt about whether a project could truly succeed was softened by her presence. Her belief, communicated not through grandiose statements but through subtle cues, through tone, body language, and timing, recalibrated my internal narrative. Where anxiety might have narrowed my focus, her influence broadened it. Where fear threatened to dictate choices, her perspective illuminated alternative paths. In essence, she rewired my decision-making processes at a neural level, creating space for creativity to flourish amidst uncertainty. One particularly vivid example comes to mind from the early days of a project that, at the time, seemed destined for failure. Conventional wisdom, both inside and outside the organization, argued against pursuing it. Metrics suggested impossibility, the market seemed uninterested, and the technological challenges were unprecedented. Rationally, it would have been safer to abandon the endeavor. But she asked one simple question: what would happen if it worked? That question, deceptively simple, triggered a cascade of neural activity that bypassed the risk-averse circuits and activated the imaginative, solution-oriented regions of the brain. In essence, she forced me to consider not just probability but possibility, a fundamental shift in cognitive framing. That reframing, subtle as it was, ultimately led to a breakthrough that redefined the project's trajectory and laid the foundation for success that few could have predicted. Emotionally, the influence was equally profound. Humans are not purely rational creatures. Our decisions are often driven by narratives, by stories we tell ourselves about who we are and who we can become. She understood this intuitively. She didn't just provide advice, she helped craft the story I needed to believe in, the narrative that aligned courage with action, failure with learning, and risk with vision. It's no exaggeration to say that her influence reshaped my personal mythology, the lens through which I interpreted challenges, setbacks, and opportunities. Neuroscientists would recognize this as a form of narrative-based cognitive restructuring, a process where the brain integrates external guidance into internal frameworks, thereby enhancing problem-solving capabilities and emotional resilience. Her impact extended beyond singular decisions and into the architecture of my life strategy. She taught the value of patience in the pursuit of audacious goals, a lesson supported by behavioral economics. Immediate gratification often sabotages long-term planning, yet her influence helped create a neural environment conducive to delayed reward, an essential ingredient for ventures that unfold over decades. By modeling clarity, persistence, and ethical consistency, she shaped the way I approach complexity, uncertainty, and interpersonal collaboration. Each interaction was, in effect, a neural and psychological calibration, aligning ambition with prudence, speed with foresight, and intuition with analysis. The most striking lesson, however, was not in what she said, but in how she observed. There is a neurological principle known as mirror neuron activation, where observing the behavior of others primes our own neural circuits for similar responses. Her calmness in crisis, her ability to navigate ambiguity without panic, and her unwavering focus on outcomes without succumbing to ego, all of these qualities were mirrored in my own behavior over time. It is a subtle, often unconscious mechanism, yet profoundly transformative. Through observation and emotional resonance, she influenced decisions in ways that transcended advice or instruction, embedding themselves directly into cognitive and emotional circuitry. And perhaps the deepest insight I've gained from her influence is the recognition that decision making is not merely a process of weighing options, but a reflection of values, relationships, and long-term vision. Her guidance illuminated the interplay between ethics, ambition, and impact. In neuroscience terms, she helped integrate the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, responsible for emotional evaluation, with the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, which governs logic and planning. This integration fosters what psychologists call wise reasoning, the ability to consider multiple perspectives, anticipate consequences, and align choices with both personal and societal good. Without her, many of the pivotal choices in my life might have been technically sound, but devoid of deeper coherence and meaning. Her influence was also iterative, cumulative, and sometimes imperceptible in the moment. Just as neural networks strengthen through repeated exposure and reinforcement, her steady presence created patterns of thought that became internalized. Over time, these patterns guided decisions instinctively. Long before conscious evaluation even occurred, she didn't merely advise, she shaped the architecture of decision-making itself, embedding resilience, creativity, and ethical clarity into the very framework through which challenges were assessed. Her influence was not limited to individual decisions, it extended to how I perceived entire systems, the way I approached the engineering of both technology and life itself. Systems thinking is not just a professional skill, it is a cognitive framework, a mental architecture for understanding complexity. Neuroscience shows that our ability to model systems, anticipating feedback loops, understanding interdependencies, and predicting emergent behaviors, relies on a combination of prefrontal executive function and deep pattern recognition in the parietal cortex. She helped me refine that skill in a profoundly human way, by asking probing questions, challenging assumptions, and insisting that every choice be evaluated in the context of both immediate outcomes and far-reaching consequences. She trained my mind to operate at the intersection of logic, intuition, and foresight. I remember a particular moment early in one venture, when the company faced a critical decision about whether to pivot its entire product strategy. Metrics indicated one path was safer, conventional, and likely to produce moderate success. The other path, though uncertain, aligned with a vision that seemed audacious even to those closest to the project. Rationally, the safer choice should have been obvious. Yet, I found myself paralyzed, caught between the desire for measurable progress and the pull of transformative ambition. She didn't give me the answer. Instead, she walked me through the potential consequences of each path, forcing me to confront the ethical, emotional, and long-term implications. It was a lesson in cognitive reframing, a reminder that decisions are not isolated events. They are embedded in a continuum of human impact, legacy, and possibility. By the end of that night, the choice became clear, not because the numbers had changed, but because my mind had been recalibrated to see beyond immediate risk to enduring significance. Emotionally, her influence created a form of psychological scaffolding, a structure that supported my ability to handle extreme pressure. It is often said that great leaders are forged in crisis, but neuroscience suggests that the ability to remain effective under stress is not merely a matter of temperament. It is a skill developed through repeated exposure to high-stakes situations in a supportive environment. Her guidance acted as a buffer against the detrimental effects of cortisol on the hippocampus, protecting memory, learning, and decision-making capacity. She provided a sense of stability without imposing control, allowing me to navigate uncertainty with both courage and clarity. In essence, she taught me how to manage the internal ecosystem of my own brain, to optimize mental resources under conditions that would overwhelm most individuals. One of the most powerful ways she shaped my life was through her insistence on asking the right questions rather than providing easy answers. Questions like, what are you willing to risk to achieve this? Or, if this succeeds, what does it change for the world? Or, what part of this decision aligns with your long-term purpose? These questions activated deep cognitive reflection, engaging not only analytical reasoning but also introspection, ethical judgment, and emotional resonance. In the language of neuroscience, she was engaging multiple neural circuits simultaneously, rational, emotional, and moral, producing a holistic approach to decision, making that is rare and invaluable. Over time, I internalized this method, and it became the backbone of how I approach every complex challenge, from engineering design to organizational strategy. Her influence also highlighted the importance of empathy as a driver of effective decision-making. Modern neuroscience confirms that empathy is not merely a social nicety, it is a critical cognitive function that allows us to predict behavior, understand consequences, and anticipate the needs and motivations of others. By consistently demonstrating empathy, by modeling how to weigh human factors alongside technical and financial considerations, she shaped my approach to leadership. Decisions became not just calculations of profit or efficiency, but careful integrations of human well-being, long-term sustainability, and ethical responsibility. The subtlety of this influence cannot be overstated. It is woven into the neural fabric of thought, shaping not only what we choose, but why we choose it. I think back to a critical juncture in another project, one that required navigating an incredibly complex web of regulations, market forces, and public perception. Conventional strategies were risk-averse, designed to minimize conflict and preserve status quo. But she helped me see an alternative path, a path that required courage, resilience, and an ethical willingness to challenge entrenched norms. Her influence was not about pushing me toward recklessness. It was about encouraging clarity, purpose, and alignment with long-term objectives. By combining rigorous analysis with a nuanced understanding of human dynamics, she created a framework for decision-making that maximized both effectiveness and moral integrity. Neuroscientifically, it was a perfect balance of top-down executive control and bottom-up emotional and social processing, a balance that is exceedingly rare in high-pressure environments. There were also times when her influence manifested in the seemingly small details that ultimately had enormous consequences, from the phrasing of a critical communication to the timing of a strategic announcement, from understanding subtle social cues to navigating complex interpersonal dynamics. Her guidance trained my brain to notice patterns that would have otherwise gone unseen. Cognitive psychology tells us that expertise is often less about innate talent and more about the accumulation of finely tuned perceptual discriminations. By observing her, by learning from her attention to nuance, I acquired an intuitive understanding of systems and people, an ability to anticipate outcomes and craft responses that was both precise and adaptable. It is this level of subtle influence, the invisible shaping of perception, attention, and judgment, that underpins so many of the pivotal choices I have made. Her impact also extended to the realm of creativity and innovation. One of the most striking neuroscientific discoveries in recent years is that creativity emerges not from random inspiration alone, but from the interplay of cognitive control, divergent thinking, and emotional engagement. By challenging assumptions, encouraging exploration without fear of failure, and fostering an environment where unconventional ideas could be evaluated seriously. She stimulated neural pathways associated with flexible thinking, pattern recognition, and integrative reasoning. Many breakthroughs that seemed sudden or miraculous were, in fact, the result of countless small recalibrations, mental experiments, and iterative reflections influenced by her presence. And perhaps most profoundly, she helped me embrace the inherent uncertainty of life and innovation. Too often, we search for certainty, for formulas that guarantee success, yet the universe, and the human brain, is complex, probabilistic, and unpredictable. She helped me understand that the courage to act amidst uncertainty, the willingness to make choices informed by values rather than fear, is not merely a philosophical principle, it is a neurological necessity. By integrating emotional regulation, cognitive flexibility, and ethical foresight, she created a mental architecture that could navigate the unknown with both resilience and clarity. Her influence, ultimately, transcended any single decision or moment. It became a guiding force that shaped the way I perceive the world, how I navigate challenges, and how I measure the true impact of my actions. Neuroscience teaches us that the brain is plastic, that it is constantly reshaping itself in response to experience, observation, and learning. Her presence was a catalyst for this neuroplasticity, guiding my thought patterns, sharpening my judgment, and strengthening the neural circuits that support creativity, resilience, and ethical reasoning. It is remarkable to consider that human influence can penetrate so deeply, altering not just behavior, but the underlying cognitive architecture that governs choice and perception. In every project I've pursued, every risk I've taken, and every innovation I've chased, her fingerprints are subtly embedded. Not in overt directives or prescriptive advice, but in the way I frame challenges, the way I balance logic with intuition, and the way I measure success not by immediate gain, but by enduring significance. Her influence shaped not only what I did, but how I thought about doing it, the questions I asked, the uncertainties I embraced, and the values that guided my actions. This is a profound reminder that the people we allow into our cognitive and emotional space can redefine the trajectory of our lives in ways that are invisible yet monumental. She also instilled a deep appreciation for the intersection of humility and ambition. It is easy to pursue audacious goals and forget that progress is most meaningful when it is grounded in a recognition of limitations, the willingness to learn, and the acknowledgement of others' contributions. Neuroscience confirms that humility enhances learning and collaboration by reducing ego-driven biases and facilitating more accurate self-assessment. Through her example, I learned that true leadership is not about asserting dominance or controlling outcomes, but about aligning vision, ethics, and human connection, creating a space where extraordinary achievements are possible without compromising integrity or empathy. Reflecting on these influences, it becomes clear that no innovation, no technological breakthrough, no personal success exists in isolation. They are the culmination of countless subtle interactions, shared insights, emotional resonances, and moments of guidance that shape perception, decision-making, and courage. The human mind, while capable of extraordinary feats, is not infallible. It thrives, evolves, and reaches its highest potential in dialogue with others who challenge, inspire, and illuminate paths we cannot see alone. Her impact exemplifies this principle in its purest form. Perhaps the most important lesson I have internalized from her influence is the necessity of presence. Not presence in the superficial sense, but an authentic presence that engages intellect, emotion, and purpose simultaneously. Neuroscientific research supports the idea that genuine engagement activates multiple neural systems, enhancing memory, learning, and emotional integration. She embodied that presence in every interaction, transforming routine discussions into profound moments of insight, every challenge into an opportunity for growth, and every decision into a reflection of values and vision. Her influence also serves as a powerful reminder that the people we allow into our inner cognitive and emotional circle are not merely companions, they are architects of possibility. The ripple effects of their insights, empathy, and guidance extend far beyond immediate moments of choice. They alter neural patterns, inspire innovation, and shape the narrative through which we interpret the world. To underestimate this influence is to underestimate the profound capacity of human connection to transform both thought and action. As I stand here today, reflecting on the journey, the risks, the breakthroughs, and the failures, I realize that her impact is woven into the very fabric of every meaningful choice I have made. It is present in the courage to tackle the impossible, in the resilience to persevere through setbacks, in the clarity to prioritize long-term significance over short-term gain. It is present in the quiet confidence that emerges not from certainty, but from trust in values, vision, and human insight. So, as you consider the trajectory of your own life, the decisions that feel insurmountable, the risks that seem too great, the moments when doubt threatens to immobilize, you must recognize the invisible forces that shape your path. Look to those whose presence inspires clarity, courage, and ethical reflection. Engage with those who challenge assumptions, who broaden perspectives, and who resonate deeply with your purpose. Neuroscience, psychology, and lived experience all confirm that the right influence can amplify potential far beyond what logic alone predicts. The choices you make in partnership with such guidance will define not only your success, but the impact you leave on the world. Ladies and gentlemen, the truth is simple yet profound. No one achieves greatness alone. The most transformative decisions are rarely the product of isolated intellect. They are the synthesis of insight, courage, and connection. Her influence transformed uncertainty into possibility, complexity into clarity, and ambition into meaningful action. And that is the ultimate lesson I share with you tonight, that the people who guide us, challenge us, and inspire us are not merely companions on our journey. They are the architects of our potential, the invisible force behind our most consequential choices, and the enduring source of the courage to imagine and achieve the impossible. Thank you.